distinguished speakers and delegates. My apologies for coming late. I think it's just endemic within our system that some meetings do not happen at the time they should. But nevertheless, it's wonderful to be here. I just wanted to assure all our partners, all the persons who have represented the organizations that they are currently working in, that SIDBI has a tremendous experience of working alongside finance. So many of you might just be wondering that, what is a bank doing in the middle of what is probably developmental work? But luckily the word development exists within SIDBI. So SIDBI is a great mix of developmental work alongside being a bank. Our remit, of course, is to look into the interests of the MSME sector. And the rather surprising facts are that the MSME sector comprises not only the large companies that you see, some of them are even listed companies, but it goes down to every single individual who works as a proprietorship without even knowing that they are called proprietors. So each and every person who works towards a particular business is listed as an MSME, and therefore the count of that number, the last official count was 6.3 crores, but estimates go anywhere up to 9 crores and 10 crores. Of this, just to give you a sense, there are 1.4 crore entities that are GST registered. And therefore, you have a very, very large informal economy which is sort of, across the country. All of us in our daily interactions are probably meeting and transacting with MSMEs. The context of MSME, therefore, when you look at it from the perspective that we are discussing today, it's really about, do they even know what is expected of them when it comes to a concept of waste, greening, carbon emissions. I mean, you can look at the entire ESG lens from so many different aspects. But I really wonder whether the vast number of MSMEs are even aware of this. When we speak at international levels, we all know that standards are probably going to come upon all of us fairly soon. So recently I also was educated in this particular space. In fact, today's excellent speeches that we've heard have been actually a direct education to me. There is so much being discussed, so much happening when we are at sessions like this or in international fora where these concepts are being discussed for the world at large. The European Commission, in fact, we've had discussions with them, and at least I found that there is a concept of a taxonomy and a standardization that has gone forward with the help of the European Commission. Now, these are obviously standards created in those countries. My fear really stems from the fact that when those standards, and those are, I would call, informal standards, they're not, with the force of law. But when those standards start becoming more important, more accepted, and might end up getting the force of law in some form or the other, then we are faced with a situation where several million MSMEs, and I'm not talking about private citizens like you and me, but all these MSMEs are going to get seriously impacted. They will not know what's hit them. They will not know how to even calculate where they stand vis-a-vis those standards. So I think it's a huge wake-up call. Any conference of this nature, I think, is so important for all of us to attend, to speak, to share our views. I was looking at the list of participants through the day, and there are some excellent sessions that are going to happen. I invite all persons who are working in this space to come forward and come up with programs where maybe SIDBI could hold hands and we could take something forward. Every small step is a step in the right direction. And I know that SIDBI has a mandate to make awareness at least happen at the MSME space. We are sort of located across the country at about 75 odd locations. We have a tremendous connect with industry associations and now increasingly with the state governments. We have funds that are earmarked for cluster development. We know that interventions that we make could have a larger impact across the MSME space. As I said, as private individuals, there's an enormous responsibility on all of us. Again, it's a matter of awareness. So I will just recount, as I was hearing the excellent speeches that we've heard today, how way back in 2002 and between 2 and 5, when I happened to be posted in London, and there was segregation happening. So as brought out so well, if Germany, had started in the 1970s, probably England had also started somewhere then. And segregation was just a regular habit. But what actually caught my attention there was the concept of how white goods were disposed, or any goods of a slightly larger nature. So you would have something called a skip, which was kept in a common area, actually on the side of the road. And people had to carry their, sort of maybe a washing machine, a refrigerator, whatever there is, and you had to dispose it by putting it into that particular, container. It was a very large container. It's called a skip over there. Frankly, as Indians, the first thing we would think is, why am I going to take the effort to go and dispose it in that manner? Now, that is our first reaction. So, I think there is a huge, change in the mindset that needs to come about. The fact that it is your responsibility to clear your waste. It's something which, maybe of late it is being taught to our children in schools. So I know that I have learnt much more from my own children when it comes to issues of, environmental safety and sort of looking after our own environment. The other one was, in fact, much closer to the current times when I was posted in Ranchi, and as one of the things we would do was to conduct performance audits of the state government. And this particular audit was actually an audit of municipal waste. It was conducted in so Ranchi and a couple of other large cities. And unfortunately, at the time when I was there in Ranchi, believe me, it was not a clean city. And I sincerely hope it has improved now. But it's palpable. You're walking on the sides of the roads. You're walking on the roads and you see the kind of filth that is just being dumped, and it's all being dumped by educated, high-income people like you and me. But nevertheless, we sort of went forward and we did this performance audit, and we thought we would elicit the response from the citizens of the city. So we put out a fairly large questionnaire which was distributed across several thousands of households, and we got a response, and it just reminds me some of the responses that we got in terms of The questions, of course, were asked that, how easy is it for you to put your waste, and, what is it that you have learned? Several questions that you could understand, to get a sense of how effective that waste management program was. And many responses were bordering on, the place that we have to go and, put our garbage is more than 30 meters or more than 20 meters from the house. So, I think it's really important for us as managers and administrators of these large programs to understand that there is a matter of convenience, there is a matter of how the customers look at it, and therefore we probably need to take that extra step. But having said that, Ranchi then proceeded to, during the time I was there, do this excellent waste management program where they had compactors, and these were, seriously large machines which would then press and compact the waste and make it into some other form which could then have an economic value and then be sold. And they had done this through an open bid. A Singapore company had come in and sort of won that bid. And there were these, very fancy new machines that were on the streets, which were picking up garbage. But within a year, that company just, got out of the contract and said, I can't do this anymore. Because they did not realize that there was very little help from the citizens to do simple things like separate your waste. So, a great experiment and a great step by the administration was probably undone by the fact that the discipline within the citizens was just not there. And it's impossible for you to employ an army of people to start separating waste. So I'm sure we've, all understood what is our own responsibility. I'm sure several such programs would go forward. I think the way that Mahua has undertaken such gigantic tasks, we have been part of Mahua's efforts on a program called PM Swanidhi, and we've seen the kind of energy levels that exist within Mahua. We've done some excellent programs with GIZ, with the World Bank, with various other partners. Some of them have been actually about energy efficiency. And I think we've got a statistic where we find that in the energy efficiency program, which is again a risk-sharing program in terms of financial instruments, we've probably created a saving or a reduction of carbon to the extent of 1 million tons of equivalent of CO2. So, there's a lot that needs to be done. I think the point really that sort of hits us, especially with the statistics that we've heard today, is the enormity of the country, the population, and therefore the problem. And I think many more such programs are needed. We are extremely, happy to be part of this risk-sharing facility. I just hope that we can carry forward this to a much larger scale. In fact, about 10 days ago, I was lucky to be in a small conference where we had Mr. Amitabh Kant also speaking. And I think one of the biggest issues in the G20 is really around, ESG and SDG, and the kind of the way that India would, one, attack these problems within the country itself and also provide further leadership in several of these issues. So I think we've all got our work cut out. Great to be here and see so many people interested in this space. We all have a lot of things to do in the future. Thank you so much.